now that we have this, like this is all nice and all, I have a very, very flexible server that can say that it's either index.html or can say that it is not index.html. We can sell this to Facebook for $1 billion now. But I kind of, like this file is too long, it's too difficult to figure out. Imagine that 12 lines is too much. I want to have some of it in another file. So I want what it's actually doing here, I want that somewhere else. So like I have might have an index.js file. In this file, I want whatever will happen here. I want it to calculate me the string that I will need here. So if I just have a function called hello, well, I can return some sort of string, hello from the index.js file. But, well, how do I get it in here? So someone might guess that, well, we need to require something, and they would be entirely right. So what we would do is we would write exports.hello is equal to hello. So what we're doing right now is that there's this magic exports object. And on that, we just create a new property called hello and assign it to our function. So then in here, we can do const index is equal to require index. Notice how I need to do /index and not just index. It's because I need to load a specific file, whereas this needs to load something from node modules. So I have that, and then I can do const answer is equal to index.hello, and I have my answer that I can send back. So if we start this again, and then go up here, it now says hello from totally the wrong file, index.html. And that's how we would separate our code into multiple files, because when we start the node command, it'll load one specific file and nothing more than that. So we need to be able to separate it out like this, and we can have as many of these as we want if we have them in some sort of directory, pages for example. Alright, index.name was really cheating with the name. Let's just call it hello. Yeah. Wrong, not the cancel button. Disable all of that. So now if I want to actually load it, I have to go to /pages/hello, and it'll also load it for me. So just as before.
You don't need the extension?
No, you don't. I actually don't even think that might actually work, but you don't need it as such, and I wouldn't recommend using it. Specifically, as you just noticed, if the file in here is called index specifically, then we actually let's create another function called world, if I can spell, and then do from world module exports dot world is equal to world. Then I don't need to include the specific file name. I can just do like that, and then I have access to that, my function. So what you can do here is that you can say, alright, so in this index file, well, const hello is equal to require dot / hello, and then you can do exports dot hello is equal to hello dot hello, and then we'll actually be taking that function we had in the other file and assigning it to a yet another value, and then we can access it back here as a function. So yeah, but what that really allows us to is say that we had multiple files in here. We can both have hello, and then we can have hi, which is in Danish. Hi is equal to a function. You can also do this, because this is just a normal JavaScript object. Then we could expose it down here too. And then we would again have that available here, which is really nice because that means we don't need to have 1,000 require up on the top. We can just do one and then access all of them. So that allows you to expose a more clean version of that specific folder, because you might have a couple of helper functions down here and things you don't really want to export to the outside world. So you just create this, we call it a barrel file, like a big fish barrel. And then you will hopefully have a nice experience with that. If you want to...
What do you mean you call it a barrel file?
That's just what people agreed on calling it. So like...
So that means it's a file that mostly exports all the other functions,
yeah.
and it compiles that into the page.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So just one big file. Yes. One last thing you can do is that, what if I, like, doing this hey.hey, that's just stupid, isn't it? Like, why do I have to specify it twice? So what I can do is, rather than doing exports, I can do module.exports is equal to a function. So now I'm actually changing the object. And the reason why I can't just do exports is equal to a function is a side effect of how things work. I have to do modules.export is equal to some function. And then down here, hi is actually a function now, which I can call. And so you can, this way that allows you to say, I only export one thing from here, which is basically the same thing that Express is doing. So we get something back and we can call it directly. The viola, now you can make Express yourself.
No, I'm just like confused from this all information.
Yes. So
welcome to the club.
I just like.
Is it okay if you will just comment what you have written instead of delete?
Yeah, I can try doing that from now.
So when you check on the video, it will be easy.
Yeah. So now you're very confused. Now please start asking questions.
Yes. The main file, it's on the browser, or it's like in the client side, or on the server?
It's all on the server. All of these are on the server. None of them are on the client right now.
So we're just working with ourselves, let's say.
Yeah, we're only working on the server here because, like in usual servers, you might end up having 1 million lines of code. Having all that in one JavaScript file would be really annoying. So you separate it into these, we call them modules. We say that each file is a module. Did we look at ES6 modules in the browser?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. We managed that. But this is basically Node's way of doing modules and doing reusable code. In the browser, we could just have multiple script files referenced. But we can't really do that in Node, because when we start the Node program, we specify the file to start.
So just to understand what you was doing exactly, that you're making a file and the file just have a function, and then you call it from the line file.
Yeah, basically. So I can import it using require, which is at .pages/hey, and then I can call hey. So we can do that down here if I want to. Start it.
So yeah.
That totally didn't work. It got very, very mad at me. Pages, hey. Did I spell it? Someone's phone is ringing. So what did I fuck up here? So on the should be // then it works much better. Now it returned hey in Danish.
But what do you like in the browser there?
So down here I'm just calling the function and then passing the result into send.
You know, in the browser, what do you like in the browser? You just like that.
Yeah. I'm just loading the server.
No, so now you have the hi in Danish, and also you have the hello.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
My question is, how do you determine, is the hello on, I think the hello is on another page? How do you load that page into the...
Because that's an... Holy shit.
That was a good question.
Helps if I actually write valid code here.
Because of the con.
Yeah, so this should probably be index 2. And there's also this hand on here that's wrong now. So if you just restart. So it's based on the URL. So what we specify here is the URL that we want to load. So if I get a specifically a request to /index.html, which is what I wrote up here, then it will do this. If I get one to not index.html, so just either that or with a slash here, it'll do this.
Oh, okay.
So if ever the website is running, the localhost 8000 part is the actual website?
Yes. Because we specified down here. So now if we have some server we want to upload this to, we actually need to go into that server and then specify the port and then find the IP and then type that up there. So it's a bit more work. Any more questions?
This 8000, you can change it.
Yeah, I can put it to, the max you can have it is I think like this much. 65,000.
I think it's too much. No, not too much, but like it was not.
It's some number of like this. But then again, there comes into the lowest you can technically use is 1. But depending on what type of machine if you're on Windows, it's a bit different. If you're on Mac, you might require administrator rights to actually be able to run on something below port 1000. So that's why when we develop, we just set it to something like 8000. So then we won't have a problem. But if we want to do like really, really crazy, we can do, so what's the name of that thing again? Holy moly, there's a lot of these. System, no. There's some way that we can get env files. Blah, 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 blah. Process, that's what it's called. So process.env, and then I can get something like the port. Or I can say if there's no port specified, go to 8000. And this will do absolutely nothing different. Like at all. So it still does the same thing, but if I tell WebStorm to slightly change the run configuration, I can set an environment variable. I can say that, alright, you should actually run on port 7000. That's a really lot of clicking. So now if I do this, this no longer loads. But if I go to 7000, it now loads over here. So now I have no longer hard-coded it into my file which port it should actually be loading on. So that means it's very easy for me to move it to another server, specify this port variable, and boom, it just loads on the new thing. So then you can easily work locally, but it's also very easy to deploy to production. So one last thing now while we're here. You can actually specify a callback for this function. And it'll actually write out when it's ready. So then if I go in and I change that run configuration again.
Do you have to specify? Do you have to specify a port? Let's say on that configuration, like const port, or just pick any port that's available.
It can. I think you could specify 0, and then it'll pick anything. And I'll just pick the first one that's available. The thing is, I'm actually not sure which one how we actually get the port it's running on. Because it'll pick one randomly.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Const server, and then server dot. Seeing what that thing says. So that has a lot of functions. Should Probably actually do it here. Come on. Work with me, WebStorm here. A connection key. Right, come on. Give me a breakpoint. And then if we go into run this in debug mode, we'll actually get a good old breakpoint here. Same thing you can do in the browser. I'm not sure if we can actually get it this way, because it's listening on 0, which is any available port. But it wouldn't surprise me if we can't actually access it. Address. Server.address. There. So we can do server.address.port. So we could technically over here write server.address.port. Oops. And if we just run it.
You write 04.
No, it should be a double D. And then we get actually told which port it's now running on.
And it just keeps going up there.
Yeah, Windows just keeps cycling, and then at some point it just restarts.
Yeah.
The thing with doing this is that while it makes it very easy to get a free port, it's really fucking annoying when you're developing, because that means that your front-end code is probably referring a specific port when it's running, so it expects you to be running on a specific port, or at least have some way of telling the front-end that I'm running on this port, this is where you should talk to me. But this is what programs like Nginx will do. They will find a port for you, and then they will tell you, using the environment variable, run on this port for me because I know it's free.
Is it more secure that way?
I mean,
Because
that depends, because technically, no. But then on the other side, it'll be much more difficult to find because you have no idea where it's running. But I could just make a new request for every single port on your server until I hit one that works. So technically you just made it a bit more difficult for me, or annoying. But it's very easy to write a program that just tests 60,000 ports. Like, that's not a big problem.
okay, because I remember my friend like back in New York, like a long time ago, he had set up.
Yeah, you just go. We'll go to a break very shortly.
Yeah, he had set up, and he had like a server that specifically just looked at the ports, like people trying to get into his stuff. He was developing database, and that's why I remember that, because he was listening to every single port on the server.
Yes, it's a really good way of tricking people. Any more questions, or should we take a short break?